G'day guys, welcome to a review for Rosehill, whatever day you want to call it, Silver Slipper, Hobatville, Millie Fox. I think they were the three sort of highlight races on the day. I think the track was pretty fair. Rosehill tends to play a little bit sort of inside and towards the speed is good, or towards inside and on speed is good. I think most of it was tempo related on Saturday. Certainly looked a bit of an advantage to save ground up the inside if you could do it, but if there was a bit of pressure up front, you could make ground sort of 4, 5, 6 off the inside without too much trouble. There were a few races where horses ran on when there was a bit of tempo, but most of the day the speeds were controlled, which sort of, I think, overemphasised, the need to save a bit of ground, just because it was certainly an advantage to sort of not come from back and wide if you had to fight the tempo as well. So for me, it was pretty fairish track, but certainly looked a little bit more up on speed and inside. So we'll get into the program itself. Race 1 was the highway over 1,400 metres, so class 3 over 1,400 metres. Nothing too exciting here to report other than the run of Preemptory. Thought that its effort, its sort of widest runner here, dragged back early. They do run along, fair enough. They run along above average early and they sort of just dip below coming home. So if anything, it was a solid to above average tempo, but not in a crazy way. Trying to find excuses for too many of these runners is difficult. The winner sits outside the leader. Its form was okay. This Danielle Sieb's doing a great job with her horses. Probably a little bit lucky to hold off the second horses. We'll see. But apart from that, it's pretty hard to knock the winner's effort. Have I got the wrong horse? No, I've got the right horse. Sorry, the winner's behind the leader. I've got the wrong horse. So it's at every possible chance behind the leader. Pops out and runs down Indicative, who does kick on okay. Raced a bit fresh, was a little bit between runs, and the winner's the second horse, is coming back towards the inside here. Preemptory, absolutely flying, found more dead ends than most, and see just sort of a tragedy beaten again. The flying super extreme down the outside, has been airborne. Obviously a few things against here. I think 1,400 is his max trip, so he needs everything to go his way. Didn't quite happen today on this day, but ran incredibly again. Should have said probably Preemptory was the clear best run on. As Bon Frankie's run third every possible chance. Not weak through the line. I thought it went okay. Syrian Star was a little bit disappointing. Thought it was the one that had the perfect run to finish over the top of them and didn't. Atmospheric Rock, I think, pulled up with a slight issue, maybe slow to recover. Went okay. Sizzle and Izzle, every possible chance battled on, and so it was Indicative. It can probably improve with the run. Evocator, just a little bit of a check in the straight. Probably took the wrong option at the top of the straight, but still a little bit plain late. From a going forward perspective, you'd expect a horse like Syrian Star to still measure up well in its area. Supreme Extreme as well for a country championship. And then you've got Preemptory, which will be in a different area. And it should be very, very hard to beat in its perspective, in its country qualifier, regional heat. So I think this form is pretty solid for from a qualifier perspective, but it wasn't an outstanding race by any measure. The winner's done a good job, sort of got away with it. Bon Frankie can run well in something similar. I'm not sure if it'll head to a qualifier as well. I'm assuming most of these will. Atmospheric Rock certainly can strip fitter for a first run for 91 days and resuming at 1,400 metres. So a decent feeder race for races like the country championships, but nothing special on paper. Race 2, 1,500 metre benchmark 72 for the 3-year-olds. Plus, Cheerful Legend wins this race. They go out above average again to the 800. They sort of maintain that, if not build it a little bit to the 600 metre mark, and they come home pretty slow here, which allows this horse to run on from back in the field. This is what I was kind of saying. A couple of races that were run at decent tempos, first and second races, and then they've sort of slowed down late, which allows the back markers to get into the race. That is not going to do the job there. That's better. So horses to sort of note at the start. Miracle Spin was the horse that missed the kick. It's out the back. early, pretty much become its pattern. Carolina Fire ends up outside of Cuban Grand Chico, who did set a solid tempo, probably brought itself undone a little bit, I would say, by doing that. Most runners, I think, had their chance here. The 3-wide line was pretty good. Lavoie sits in the 3-wide line with Cover Whiskey Wisdom's back behind it. Miracle Spinners, just sort of sit last. Golly Gosh is in that run. Carolina Fire's outside the leader. Battles on okay. The horse that I thought jury's out on this State of America. I think the stable's kind of lost on what this horse is. Kind of loses a bit of momentum heading into the straight and then sort of picks up and looks a bit unlucky late. This is the winner, Cheerful Legend, towing up in the 3-wide line, gets to the middle. Whiskey Wisdom, which has only beaten sort of a length. Horse that I thought was flattered last start, but again, sort of doesn't look to be doing a heck of a lot, and then picks up the bit and runs through the line. Could this be a horse that's a smoky for further and as a 3-year-old filly? I'm not sure. So she's a horse that interests me just because she's gone 1,000, 12, 14. This is 15, and again she's finding the line. If you're talking races like Oakses and things like that, it's all going to be first prep. So you'd say it's nearly an impossible task, but this horse does keep finding the line and sort of back to 3-year-old fillies grade. May be dangerous in something, mile plus, just the way that she's racing. So she's an interesting horse. Whiskey Wisdom, thought the winner's, going well, but had everything to suit here, but pace-wise, and didn't do anything special late. Lavoie was okay. It's not been racing that well, so that puts the doubt over this race. In general, Miracle Spin was first up. I don't think it's a first up horse. Did a decent enough job. Those on speed that sort of did a bit of work in Carolina Fire, Cooper and Guchico, they were both quite fit heading into this and battled on. State of America we've talked about. New Republic was the one that was ridden too close. I think it was just ridden up behind the speed, which I don't think was ideal, and probably cost it finishing a little bit closer. It's maybe ready to do something next time out, but jury's out a little bit too. I'm not sure if it's returned as well as it sort of went out. And then there's the Horse True Crime that weighed in light and was disqualified, which is something you don't see every day. So from a future perspective, I thought there was not much in the race. Past Mark 2 Miracle Spin first up, past Mark 2 State of America coming back in distance. Don't think that was ideal. Past Mark 2 Whiskey Wisdom that continues to find the line, even though it looks a bit one-paced and may just need further. Race 3. Benchmark 78 for the 3 and 4-year-olds. This was a really strong little race. Unfortunately, economics came out at the gate, which was a bit of a disaster. The winner, a really good effort here. This race is quite a nice race. They do control the tempo up front and sprint home quite well. So horses out the back were at a disadvantage. The horses like Party for One and the Poacher, who was the horse I thought would run well here, sort of lacked a bit of speed that I thought it might be able to hold out. Duchy of Savoy couldn't do that. Did melt a little bit in the heat, being first up. The Poacher, big, strong character, so I'm going to be forgiving of it. But all on this with Parasol, you see it sort of working up outside the leader now. Hypothetical crossed them very easily controlled. Can see it's a little bit keen. Wants to get its head sort of racing tight there. It's not on a loose rein. It's overdoing it in the run. Insurrection gets every possible chance back to the inside when the leader rolls off. Renosu every chance, Duchy of Savoy every chance. Party for One's back on the outside there. Thought its effort was quite good. Ran very fast, closing 6:42 for the day. The Poacher, as I said, I thought it was up just okay, but it was a pass mark first up, and $1 Billion Baby was okay as well coming down the outside. But all honours with the winner. It's had to work up outside, just a leisurely tempo, but super strong through the line. I didn't think it was stopping at all. Even though they're sort of closing a little bit, I didn't think this horse was stopping. He is pricked across the line. This is a horse that can continue to race it very well, showing that it's a little bit adaptable, can race up on speed, obviously only 52 kilos there, but I think that race is pretty good. I think Insurrection's a pretty decent benchmark sort of horse, and Party for One's obviously flying and continues to rattle off these crazy sections without winning. A very frustrating horse for the owners. $1 Billion Baby as well ran some really slick sort of sections, and sort of the Poacher wasn't too bad either. All things considered, I think it was a pass mark. I think this form will definitely carry into other similar races, and and be a decent form of reference, and it was a strong enough race overall. So Parasol certainly can continue to keep winning, and others in the race will be dangerous if they're placed to advantage. The 2-year-olds, the Silver Slipper. This is one of the weirdest races you'll ever see for mine. Not really sure what was going on with King's Gambit. It fell apart before the race. You can see he's sort of given it a bit of a dig out. Looks like he sort of wants to make Platinum Jubilee work to cross, and then for whatever reason, as soon as that happens, Nash he forcibly restrains the horse, who was already keen to kind of overdo it before the race. So it was a strange tactic, I thought, especially when they're not going fast at all. They're running very controlled sections. They even slow down from the 6 to the 8 to the 6, and then they zip home here. So complete control to the leader in Platinum Jubilee. Every conceivable possible chance to Cylinder, who drew the 1, and Nash is sort of nearly running cover for him. I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying that's how it's worked out. He's basically dragging the horses behind back and making them work even harder to get into the race potentially, and allowing the Cylinders to drag behind the leader, get out and do whatever it wants to in the straight. So nothing could have gone more right for Cylinder, I don't think, in the run, and the same for the leader, Platinum Jubilee. Again, King's Gambit seems to have cost himself a little bit before the race, got really worked up, and then a very strange ride from Nash. Still strong enough through the line. What do you do with that horse? I'm not really sure. I was pretty harsh on the winner, looking at him the first time around, just because he had such a charmed run. But you've got to sort of put into perspective that this horse was first up. The leader there was a very hard-fit horse that's run very well in a Magic Millions. No excuses whatsoever. Has run home really quick time, and is run down. And this horse is very strong through the line. He's not a push-button horse. Like, he's not going to sprint off a dime and put a race away that way, but he doesn't look a horse that can go through his gears, and he should only improve off this. So Cylinder should be a player when heading forward into other 2-year-old races of deep quality. I think this race will be quite a nice race heading forward. Platinum Jubilee maybe just showing herself up that she needs an absolutely perfect run in transit, as in, probably a sit, not to be ridden so aggressively, and maybe she can quicken a little bit off that, but she'll need things to go her way to beat the top line horses, I think. Sort of had a lot of hard racing and maybe a few months away maturity-wise from being at this level. King's Gambit's really, it's all in his head whether he can sort himself out. As I said, the ride wasn't great, but he was still strong through the line, still ran quite well, all things considered, King's Gambit. So if we put this race down to just being strange, he was the one who probably had excuses. Cylinder, no excuses, but was first up and did build through the line nicely and run home quite well, even though he sort of tended to hit a bit of a flat spot. Didn't think Fire Lane was terrible, just taken out of the race and sort of off the bit early, but still found the line quite well late, the last 200 metres of that case. So interesting to see if Fire Lane can build off that. I still think those horses are up against it, Platinum Lane, Jubilee and Fire Lane. Cylinder's probably the horse with the most upside out of the race, just because King's Gambit is doing a lot wrong. And he's going to have to improve his manners to measure up. But ability-wise, he certainly got it there. So not completely sacking him, that's for sure. King's Gambit. Race 5. Bit of a change of tactics here from Lindemann. Last time just sort of took a sit and ground away late. This time taken straight to the front. Maintained a pretty solid tempo and sort of quickened off it and maintained that tempo basically throughout the race. A really nice race overall, it looks. So no fluke in this win, but he's just sort of taken the sting out of the runners behind him. He's carved Willinga Rufio, who sat outside him and punctured. So no excuses for any of the beaten brigade here, I don't think. Navajo Peaks had a really nice run, sitting just behind the leader. Who was the other horse? Sorry, they finished Kokoros. It's 1-1. It was the horse I thought it was really well set up. And on first sight, I thought it was a little bit disappointing, but the winner's just gone really well. Probably gone to a new career peak, I would imagine. No excuses at all for the top weight and super shooter. Gets out late, thought it peaked on its run. Really no excuses said for anything. The horses out the back faced a task, but that's just because they've sort of kept running in the race. Star Beretta and Hollywood North both run on quite well, but they're both hard-fit horses. Victim to their pattern a little bit. Fear Naught was plainish down the middle. Tal's Need was just plain, I thought. Sort of had midfield cover and peaked. Pierre Rossi was good the last 200. That's him coming down the outside in the Triple Crown colours in the red. Right, runs through the line quite nicely late, but he definitely doesn't get warmed up until basically the race is over and through the line. So I thought his was a pass mark, certainly first up. Horse that's run sort of 10th. Thought he's done a decent job and a little bit hidden. No excuses for anything behind Lindemann. Kokoro's racing well. Maybe just a little bit flat second up off a good effort first up. He's probably a horse that I still have a good amount of time for. And Lindemann certainly is a horse that's on the up as well. So I think the form will be okay out of this race. I think this is a pretty strong race. So even saying a horse like that's run 10th in Pierre Rossi can certainly improve. Whether his form is super strong or he was just lucky to get away with that, whatever that race was called. I think it was the Newcastle Spring Stakes. If that form sort of holds up and he can go to another level, I'm not sure, but his run there was good enough. Race 6, the Millie Fox. They don't go super fast here, but they do sort of up the tempo from the 800 to the 600. So they've definitely been weakened up front by that stage. They maintain a decent tempo, but it's basically a solid tempo throughout. It's more like an even tempo where they've run decent time all the way. Good effort by Electric Girl to win this race first up. Every possible chance, there's no doubt about it. The Hawks horses were in the zone on Saturday. Quite a few of them ran very well. Superior, Electric Girl, Zarek, obviously, and they're really on song. So this was no exclusion to that. Expat leads. Maramia is sort of forced to sit outside at Maria Mia and is chasing a long way out. And you can see she was basically a beaten horse on the turn. She battled away okay, sitting outside the leader. Not her thing, I don't think, on a fast tempo. So she was sort of shown up and exposed, which it was always possible. And the winner was very findable. It was just a matter of whether it's fit enough. And obviously it was. You can see it sort of racing their third defence, every possible chance. But Vitra, I thought, was really good. For a horse that sort of may peak at 2,000 metres plus, I thought her effort was great. Resuming, Roots looked the winner when it sort of rolls up from an inside position here midfield and gets a split, and I thought she may just burst over the top of them. She sort of just peaked late. As I said, the time was pretty good, so it was a good effort for her to be able to close and get as close as she did. No real excuses for the ones behind. Sort of Honey Creepers a long way back, never gets into it. Catlin, I thought, was pretty plain in the straight, maybe needs a soft track, just looked like it never stretched out. Cliff's Art ran on okay from the back down the outside there. So no excuses for any horse here, really. Thought they all had their chance. Probably Maria Mia was the one that had to work the hardest, but had a fitness edge on most of these runners. So really nothing exciting to be learned here. Electric Girl just loves these dry tracks. Will be suited in anything similar to this, around Rosehill especially. I think she's a horse that can be a specialist. So I think Roots is returning good order. A funny horse that races really well fresh. Maybe her ripper run for the prep was wasted there. She did sort of race on better over the spring. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes. But I think Pavitra is probably the one that can be followed into some really nice 3-year-old races over the carnival. She definitely looks to have come back in really strong form, Pavitra. Parramatta Cup, this was an interesting race. Basically, it's a 1,900 metres listed race. So that was a 1,300 metre Group 2, the Millie Fox. But they look like they ran along here, and they didn't really. They sort of, this horse gets keen early, and then they really anchor drop, especially sort of from the 800 metres to the 600. They're really slowing down, and then they sprint up to the last 600. So it's a bit of a funny race, running patches. Banju obviously got a little bit keen early, overdid it. And that really doesn't take away from the run of King Frankel, because you can see he's sort of out there working. He's first up at the 1,900, had trialled well, but not many trainers or even attempt this in Australia, maybe a few more down in Melbourne, but not something you see all the time. A good effort to be leading these horses up. As you can see him outside the leader, they're working. Youth Spirit's back on the inside. Thought its run was okay. Sacramento 1-1. Think it's ready to go after this. Thought its effort was good. But the leader's hard fit. You can see sort of just about now starts to control the tempo a bit more, really drops the anchor, and then gives itself a chance to sort of kick off it. So its effort was certainly good. It's a horse that's continued to race for its grades, race really honestly, and again put in a really strong performance. But All honest for me with the winner in King Frankel down in the weights here, but still it's hard to sort of knock any horse that wins a race like this first up. Sitting outside the leader, here is where the tempo really comes out of the race. They're all getting a little bit of a breather and allows the leaders to sort of get away and steal a margin over the ones out the back. Pari Sound I thought was pretty plain. It's the one that doesn't really run on. Mohican Heights I thought was entitled to run a little bit better. It's 3 back the inside there behind New Spirit, sort of just battles on, and the rest just really don't get into the race. Bonnie Ezra and the rest. So the first 4 in the run finished first 4 across the line. As I said, Sacramento's had its chance here, but a horse that does usually thrive on a little bit of racing and does look like he's ready to rock and roll now. Whether he's found his mark in life or not, yet to be sort of desired. He's a horse that's not easy to catch these days, but definitely fitness-wise, I love the way he sort of attacked the line, just kept coming. New Spirit was only second up, thought he did a good enough job, but had every possible chance. And we've talked about the first 2 across the line. King Frankel's the one with all the upside. So it'll be interesting to see where sort of he goes and where he progresses to this preparation. Hobatville Stakes for the 3-year-olds over 1,400 metres. This is the sort of lead up to the Randwick Guineas. I thought it was a pretty disappointing race. Jury's out on Af Cabin. Did slip at the start, as you see, sort of comes out last there, tries to quickly recover. They aren't going super fast. They sort of go out sort of just below a length, below average to the 800 metres, and about even time by the time they get to the 6. So probably what's interesting to see here is that he is a little bit wide and working, and Zoo Tiger certainly does kick up to try and make him work. Whether that costs Zoo Tiger in the end and not Af Cabin, no one will ever know. So instead of sort of sliding and sitting outside the lead, they put that 2-length margin on the rest, and Af Cabin probably pays the ultimate price for it. But did Zoo Tiger cost him the race as well? In hindsight, in the heat of the moment, you're certainly probably doing the right thing to try and make the favourite work a little bit harder and weaken his finish. And so I'm definitely not saying it was a bad option from Abdullah, but just sort of pointing out what happened. And it probably weakened them both a touch. Nash is laughing to himself on Ostapenko on the inside after he gave it one of the weirdest rides you've ever seen. First up, this was far more clinical from him. Box seating, jumped the horse out, and super strong late, which is only, Nash can do as well as anyone. Matcha Latte, every chance, 1-1, sort of looms up 3 wide here. Very good effort resuming. See Af Cabin get checked out there late when beaten anyway. Probably finishes certainly in front of Williamsburg, if not very close to Matcha Latte, I would have imagined. But still, thought that his effort was only okay. I don't think this horse runs a mile. I'll be very surprised if he even runs in the Randwick Guineas. But, James is a very good trainer and he'll work it out. There's no doubt about that. The Kiwi Pier was backing on the inside here. He didn't do a lot. He sort of battled on. Williamsburg, a little bit restricted room late. He did okay. Zoo Tiger ran to his absolute best, as he always tends to. Very honest horse, but maybe just a length below the really top-line horses, but still very honest, as you sort of said. Brosnan ran okay down the middle. Prometo was out the back and never really did a lot. Communist led, sort of did cop a little bit of pressure, that's for sure. And you see, he's not weak through the line, so I'm really happy to give him another chance, especially I don't think he's a leader, Communist. So if he's ridden off speed with that run under his belt, I'm not knocking him completely, Communist, especially at the sort of tier below. I think he's capable of he's a very capable sort of Group 2 level horse. Matcha Latte, the interesting part about her is it her? I'm sure it's her. No, it's him. Sorry. Him is that he's not a her. So, sorry, it's been a long day. So sort of, I think Ostapenko's on track. He just should continue to improve, but every possible chance there in what was only an average race for mine. Zoo Tiger the same, Matcha Latte the same, Williamsburg the same. Af Cabin I don't think runs out a strong. I think 1,400 is the absolute furthest he gets. I think he's a 1,200 metre horse, and the others probably need a bit further or easier. So to me, it was a bit of a scary race. I'll be looking for something to beat these horses in the Rosehill, in the Randwick Guineas, to be honest. Maybe the Melbourne form is stronger, and if not, I think a horse like Ostapenko needs to take another step from this. I'm not really sure what else behind can really take the step to put a race away like the Randwick Guineas. And if they don't sort of measure up, then a horse like Matcha Latte certainly can improve, considering that was only a first up run and can be in the finish. Whew. Second last, benchmark 1,400 meters, full control of the race here, crosstalk, absolutely no excuses. Zayrek comes from the middle of the line. Good to see him back racing well. A very strong win this, and ran some very slick sections, fastest last 800 of the day. Sort of second fastest last 600, and did sort to peak late, but was entitled to. The run of Superior, as sort of pointed out earlier, was a huge run, backing on the inside here, back and sort of cover here. Waywall was very disappointing, backing on the inside, just in front of Superior. Superior sort of had to change course late. Bill Finch sits outside the leader here. I thought it was very one-paced and out-sprinted. Lakeen behind the leader was poor, maybe a touch keen in the run, but they're not going quick here. And he was very plain in the straight. Cuban Royale, another very honest performance. One out, one back there, number 8, and it's Zarex on the inside. What else have we got in the race here? Nothing too exciting. Character sort of just battled away. Didn't think there was anything too exciting to report, but it is just flying Superior. It's probably the horse that may be a little bit forgotten here, darting back towards the inside, staying one off or behind Waywall, and then back towards the inside. So Zarek was really dominant, if anything, over them all, to be fair. It sort of come from a position behind most of these runners and ran past them. Bullfinch battled on really well, sort of out-sprinted, hard horse to catch. No excuses for any of them. I think that's as good as crosstalk goes. It was just a silly price. No excuses for him whatsoever. If he went faster in front, he would have got beaten further for mine. So no excuses whatsoever. All honours with the winner, and I thought Superior was the hidden run. Cuban Royale racing really well, just maybe found out at this level, needs everything to go its way. Lucky last, 1,100 metres, benchmark 94. And we have got the mighty Andermatt winning this race. Midwest was favourite. Again, controls the tempo quite well. They go out sort of just above average to the 600. So the pressure goes on between the 8 and the 6 to the 800 metres mark. Controls quite well. So used up a touch to lead. Cote just had to be used up a touch to get outside the leader after Mautai was sort of driven quite aggressively to hold that behind the leader position. It may have brought the whole race undone for the first 3. Just that Mautai just being a little bit aggressively ridden. You can see he's quite keen. Cote very keen. They've really put the acid test to Midwest nice and early. You've got Forzanini dragging up behind them. Hendermark coming to the outside in the blue. Every conceivable possible chance. Flying Crazy gets the run through. Kiss Sun was not bad. The horse that gets squeezed out is Handle the Truth. Shelby 66 with it. And you've got Quick Tempo, who is absolutely flying and love the little bit of early speed injection and runs on without really threatening, but again, runs on well, just not really in a Rosehill 1,100 metre horse. Thought the Midwest did a good job to sort of fight back on the inside, even though they didn't go overly quick. Maybe showed that a little bit further than 1,100 is still possible for that horse. Thought its effort was quite good. Andermatt was well set up. No excuses, did the job. No real excuses for anything behind, apart from Cote, who just racing quite keenly. Mautai did sort of chime in like it was going to do something, and that was only second up. So you can see here, Mautai nearly looks the winner, 1,200 back to 11, second up with the blinkers reapplied. I think it all worked, just sort of got a little bit keen in the run from just being a little bit too aggressively ridden early. Next time out, maybe D-Day for him, but he's another one that may have just found his mark. And I thought the return of Kiss Sun was really nice. Not an 1,100 metre Rosehill horse, and did cop a little bit of a check there and ran on quite well. Flying Crazy was pretty good first up as well. A show of that it's returned in good order, even though none of those horses really look like ever threatening. Forzanini, every conceivable possible chance was there, but again, never really looked the winner. Just sort of ran a very positive enough race, but every conceivable hope to do so. Yeah, no excuses. Every horse had their chance, I think, in the last pretty much. Maybe Midwest was carved up a bit, but it's not as if they went crazy. So that's the meeting. I'll throw up a few horses to follow in a bit of a graphic, just when I sort of had a chance to go through them and an idea of where I think they probably are best going forward. It wasn't too exciting a meeting. Maybe the disappointment was the Rosehill Guineas lead, so the Randwick Guineas lead up in the Hobatville. Yeah, just a pretty plain race on paper. And if you're going to say Cabin doesn't run a mile, which I don't think it does, that makes the Randwick Guineas a far more open affair than what betting sort of thought a week or two ago. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. As we continue on into the carnival, the 2-year-olds, Cylinders was very good, and King's Gambit, it's just got to stop costing himself. And I think they are probably players heading forward. And the 2-year-olds, I was a big bagger of them prior to Christmas, but they're starting to come together. There's not a lot between a lot of them. Learning to Fly looks a very talented horse. It's adaptable. Probably looks the benchmark horse at the moment. That Cafe Millennium of John O'Shea's looks exciting, but probably a 1,400 metre plus 1,600 metre horse on a big track, I would say, is where he'll really come into his own. So the 2-year-olds are getting exciting, and we're sort of the carnival is warming up. And the only thing that's probably not so exciting is the sprinters, but that may be a changing of the guard. Maybe we're going to see some new horses come through over the carnival. See you next week, guys.